I've been targeted by ghosts. That day, at the cemetery, I casually tossed a flower beside a lonely grave. Only when I returned home did I learn my adoptive parents had arranged a ghost marriage for me. That night, as trumpets and drums erupted, a grim 8-bearer sedan chair stopped right outside our house. I screamed like mad, yet they simply smiled, welcoming the sight. Go on, complete this for your brother, and let us recoup some of our losses. It was then that a man, dressed in a Sun Yat-sen suit, walked in. In his hand, he held the very flower I had carelessly discarded that morning. He asked, "Why has this maiden, who once pledged herself to me, now chosen to marry another? I am the adopted daughter of the Lin family. At 13, I was lost, captured, and sold to them. In this house, I also have a younger brother, Lin, who is frail and often sick. It seems I was born with the ability to see unclean things. My adoptive parents would hold their noses and call me unlucky, yet they bought me because I was useful for Lin's illness. Without being taught, I knew how to perform spells and draw talismans to ward off evil and avoid misfortune. What ancient folk would call a Mao Shan sorceress. Other than that, I was useless, just a bad investment. When I first came here, being beaten and starved was common, but Lin always stood up for me. One day, while herding cattle, we got caught in a heavy rain, and he stood at the village entrance, holding an umbrella over me. When I was hungry, he would secretly bring me a nourishing bowl of soup. He told the Lin couple, "Even though it isn't your daughter, she is my sister." His gentle yet firm voice warmed my heart. So, every day, I tried to prolong my brother's life. But how could my petty tricks defy the will of heaven? 7 years later, on the day the last handful of earth was laid upon Lin's coffin, I couldn't shed a single tear. I wasn't allowed to ruin my expensive, freshly made-up face. I wasn't supposed to be there at all. As my adoptive parents said, for an outsider like me to even be allowed into the cemetery to see Lin off was the greatest favor the Lin family had bestowed upon me. They let me come, but not to bid him farewell. And then, they not only hired a makeup artist, but also a photographer. They wanted a picture of me in this cemetery. I had no say in the Lin household. Someone shoved a vibrant red rose into my hand, and I was arranged in various poses. Only when the photographer shouted, "Okay," did this bizarre scene officially end. In the distance, Lin's grave had become a small mound of earth. I carefully, gently approached, wanting to place the flower on his grave. But my adoptive parents spotted me and knocked it away. "You jinx! Get that thing away from here." Having no other choice, I placed the flower in a lonely corner of the graveyard. It was as solitary as my own circumstances at that moment. It was as solitary as my own circumstances at that moment. On the way back, everyone was silent. I walked at the very end of the procession. Suddenly, a familiar figure squeezed into the middle of the road, saying, "Old Lin, everything is ready." It was Madame Zhao, a famous matchmaker in the surrounding areas. But she didn't look happy at all. Instead, she seemed even gloomier. She glanced at me from afar, then leaned in close to my adoptive mother's ear and whispered something. I ignored her, just pulled up my sleeve to wipe off the powder on my face, preparing to find a secluded spot to cry my heart out and release the suppressed grief. But, to my surprise, upon returning home, even crying became a luxury. The morning hall, draped in white linen in the main hall, had been redecorated into a vibrant red wedding hall. Relatives and neighbors who had just moments ago offered condolences now vied to congratulate my adoptive parents. It was then that I realized I had been arranged for a ghost marriage and was to be wed that very night. All those strange actions at the cemetery, they wanted my portrait taken before the wedding. I'm always slow to react. By the time I finally understood everything, it was already dark. The grim 8-bearer sedan chair had stopped right outside the house. The sound of trumpets and drums made my heart pound. Marrying a dead person meant marrying a ghost. This was impossible. I screamed like mad, but my adoptive parents merely smiled. "Go on, complete this for your brother." And let us recoup some of our losses. He was already dead. What did it have to do with them? The first sentence was a lie. The second was the truth. I'd rather bash my head against a wall and die. I was just a bad investment anyway. My adoptive father slapped me hard. The Lin family raised you for 7 years. Now, we're exchanging your marriage for your brother. Are you so selfish? You can't even do this for him. I froze, unable to utter a word. It wasn't that I feared these people, but amidst the chaotic noise of the crowd, I suddenly remembered a story Lin once told me. He said that in this region, at least in these villages and towns, there was a belief passed down through generations. People believed that young men and women who died unmarried would, if not given a ghost marriage, develop an obsession and become vengeful spirits, never to find peace. Then he had asked me, "Sister, will I become a vengeful spirit?" I remembered the terrifying specters I had encountered. Lin was so gentle and pure. He shouldn't turn into one of those things. All right, I looked at my adoptive parents and said, "I'll obey you." So I meekly picked up the fiery red bridal gown from the ground. There was nowhere left for me to hide. Lin was gone, and there was nothing left for me to hope for. Perhaps I could do this one thing for him. Just as I was about to step into the main hall, a man in a Sun Yat-sen suit appeared in the courtyard. In his hand was the flower I had placed on the grave that morning, his gaze piercing through all the guests and settling on me. He asked, "Why has this maiden, who once pledged herself to me, now chosen to marry another?" He was a ghost, wasn't he? But he looked refined and elegant, exuding an air of noble dignity, unlike the other demons and monsters I had encountered before. I bowed my head, pretending not to see him, clutching my skirt as I walked towards the bridal sedan chair. As I passed him, I noticed the flower in his hand suddenly glowed and transformed into the image of Lin, whom he held by the nape of the neck, dragging him along the ground. I gasped, "Lin!" But the tiny soul showed no reaction. Was he trying to threaten me with my brother? Before I could speak, he flicked his other hand, and a sudden cold gust swept through the courtyard, turning everything into chaos. The large jujube tree split in two, falling at a peculiar angle, and striking my adoptive parents on the head because the situation was so bizarre. The crowd screamed and scattered. I mumbled something, intending to run to help them, but as I tried to lift my feet, I felt as if my legs were filled with lead, rooted to the spot, unable to move. My body still had sensation, yet my mind began to spin. Crows shrieked mournfully in the howling night wind. After a while, I could finally move. My adoptive parents seemed to awaken at the same time as me. They had no injuries. When they opened their eyes and saw me, they no longer showed their usual disdain and avoidance. Instead, they took my hand, tears streaming down their faces, saying, "Ah, dear daughter, we won't marry you off anymore. We have money. We'll pay someone to arrange things for us." They called me dear daughter, said they had treated me poorly, then slapped themselves and bowed repeatedly, apologizing profusely. Had they been hit on the head too hard? But their trembling hands were real, and their tears were warm. I frowned. Their way of solving problems seemed wrong, but I was accustomed to silence, so I just stood there coldly, watching their repentance. The instigator still stood silently to one side, his figure tall and impeccable, holding the blood-red rose. Lin's shadow was nowhere to be seen. He smiled gently and said, "Is the maiden's anger appeased now?" I was dumbfounded. "So, it was for this?" "Thank you, I am very grateful." After all, in the past 7 years, except for Lin, no one had ever stood up for me or avenged me. And this way, I wouldn't have to go through that monstrous ghost marriage. But what I didn't expect was that he saved me hoping for a favor in return. He leaned closer to me, his brows beautifully arched, his eyes filled with hope as he said, "Come with me, won't you?" I loudly refused. "Don't mess with me." With that, I frantically rushed to the small truck parked outside. Like a moth to a flame, turned the key, stepped on the gas, and sped away. After the dizziness, my brain didn't seem quite normal. It retrieved memories from before I was 13. Everyone thought I had a missing brain nerve, big as I was, yet still getting lost. I almost believed it myself. But there was another reason. My fate was quite special. From a young age, I was followed by ghosts, scared almost to death, until my master expelled them. My master had divined my fate. At 13, I would face a great calamity. After coming of age, another. If I could overcome both, my life would be smooth sailing. I had asked my master then, what if I couldn't overcome them? My master looked up at the sky and said, "If you can't overcome them, then follow nature's course." And so, at 13, that calamity arrived. My master died. Starting from 18, strange occurrences grew more frequent. 2 years later, it's today. I'm arranged for a ghost marriage, and ghosts are at my door. When I was young, I relied on my master. Grown up, I must rely on myself. This was my master's original words. All right, I stomped on the gas pedal. If I can't fight, I'll run away. But I overestimated myself. Braking too hard on a sharp turn on the highway, the small truck lost control and plunged down a ravine. Luckily, my life was sturdy. The truck didn't flip. The bridal sedan chair behind me was thrown off, scattering the wedding procession at the foot of the mountain. The front of my car also hit someone. I jumped out the window and stood there, stunned. The injured person was the bride, dressed in a vibrant red wedding gown. Under the dim streetlights, her legs were bent unnaturally, severely deformed, blood spreading into a horrifying pool. She slowly crawled towards me, like a vengeful female ghost demanding life. I dared not move an inch. To my surprise, when she got close, she repeatedly bowed to me, uttering only words of gratitude. Her voice was a mixture of crying and laughing. If her body wasn't intact, then she wouldn't have to marry a dead person anymore. I ignored the absurd situation before me, sympathetically asking her, "So where will you be marrying?" The girl was a bit delirious and couldn't answer my question. Beside us, someone sighed and spoke. "Oh, heavens! I don't know whether to feel sorry for the bride or fear that the business deal won't be settled. Who else would be here? This is old Lin, the neighbor whose son just died." The person glared at me angrily, then squinted, scrutinizing me from head to toe. Suddenly, he grabbed my arm and shouted, "Isn't this the Lin family's daughter? Don't let her escape. They say all of this happened because of me. If they catch me, the Zhao family won't have to be responsible."